is a mother, an advocate, an activist, and a 20-year resident of our community here. She started her activism at Planned Parenthood when she was in high school. Representative Harris is the Florida State Representative for Florida House District 44. Now, for those of you who don't know, this district includes Universal, International Drive, SeaWorld, the Orlando International Airport, also Shingle Creek, where we're having the next kayaking paddle, right? Which is part of the headwaters of the Everglades. She also serves as the secretary of the Florida House Climate and Energy Caucus with Representative Escamani and Representative Cross. This caucus advocates for policies to combat climate change, reduce fossil fuel dependence, and promote clean energy production. Representative Harris serves on the way of, from what seems like a lot of different committees, and I am going to list them because I want you to know how many she's doing. The Joint Select Committee on Collective Bargaining, Children, Families, and Senior Subcommittee, Ethics, Elections, and Open Government Subcommittee, Infrastructure and Tourism Appropriation Subcommittee, State Administration and Technology Appropriation Subcommittee, Transportation and Modals Subcommittee. So please help me welcome to the CFFC Representative Rita Harris.
Thank you, everyone. It's so good to be here. I'm sorry I was late. In a past life, we trapped a lot of cats when we bought our house and we got them all fixed. That was like 13 years ago. And many of them still live there. And one of them came this morning and she was injured, and so my husband went into like rescue mode, and he's like, we gotta trap them. And I'm like, I gotta go be somewhere. He's like, I need your help. And so I was a little late because we were scrambling around this morning trapping a cat. We trapped her. She'll be going to the vet tomorrow, so for anyone who's wondering about that. She's gonna be fine. She just has an injured paw. So like it was mentioned, I got my start at Planned Parenthood when I was in high school. It was the 90s. And we were dealing with an attack on Roe at that time as well. I joined a group called the Positive Force Players, and what we would do is we would write skits about our experiences as teenagers at the time, and then we would go to schools and we would perform them, and usually a school would pick out, like, it was like an a la carte. Schools would pick out different skits and we would perform them. But on top of it, we were trained. We got hundreds of hours of peer counseling training, which was really great. So like, it was not just an experience of helping other people, but it was an experience of learning a lot. And I really kind of credit that time there as helping me be an effective advocate, and for really teaching me to be super, super empathetic. But I was already kind of open to that. My mother was not very religious, but my grandmother was very Catholic. I'm ethnically Jewish, but I was raised Catholic, so that means I'm very confused. And I feel incredibly guilty about everything. So if you stub your toe, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, as if I had something to do with it, because I believe somewhere I probably did. But the thing about my grandmother that was different than a lot of, I would say, Catholic people is that she was very, very liberal. And so she was very pro-choice. She was pro-marriage equality before it was really a thing, because in her belief, her beliefs of religion were personal and private, and they were between her and God and not her and everyone else. And so that's kind of how I was raised to view religion, is that it's something very personal and private and should be between that person and whatever God or lack of God that they believe in. After I moved out on my own, I did not really stay very religious. I went through all the things that a lot of Catholics do. I had my confirmation and my catechism, but when I had my own daughter, I can tell you right now her favorite book is The Hitchhiker's Guide. Carl Sagan is her hero. She loves Neil deGrasse Tyson. She is somebody who's like, I don't know what's out there. I won't presume to know what is or isn't out there, but I just feel like we should all just let everybody live and let live and believe what they want to believe, as long as it's not hurting anybody. And I think that's right? As long as it's not hurting anybody. That is the real specific part of that statement. I was there at the convention center, and you're right, they had two people speak. I was actually surprised that somebody of Hindu faith was speaking, because normally when someone gets up to talk, they are of one faith. And I think that when talking about freedom from religion, it's also understanding that we have a lot of different faiths in this country. But only one is ever really presented. So not only are people who don't, who are humanist or secular, not only do they not feel represented, but there are also people who believe certain beliefs they don't feel represented either. I think on the House floor, I think we had one rabbi speak, and that was after it was commented that, you know, every morning I come into session, I listen to a Christian invocation, and I never hear somebody from my religion speak. And only after it was said was a rabbi brought in to actually speak. So I feel like whether, you know, we have a lot of allies, whether you're secular or you believe in a religion that is more marginalized in this country, that's a place for allyship, because they probably feel frustrated with always hearing one point of view all the time and never seeing themselves up there as well. So I think that's really important. But what's going on right now, I believe, is a brand of Christianity that's very focused on a viewpoint of one particular kind of person. And that's what's being pushed out there. And so that is why I say that, you know, religion should be personal between what you believe, and it shouldn't hurt anybody else. And when you start to attempt to legislate your personal beliefs onto everybody else, that's when we have a problem. Now, how anybody wants to believe is their I'm not going to say anything. If you want to believe what you believe, that's fine. But when we start to put that into legislation and have that be the catalyst or the impetus for legislating, then we have a problem, right? I don't take my personal beliefs and look at it on a piece of paper and say, these are my personal beliefs, and I think that this should be a law because I personally believe that. Our laws should be based on making sure that everybody's rights are protected. Our laws should be based on making sure everyone's healthy, everyone's safe. Not, I want this law because personally my belief is that it's against some higher being, and because of that, I want that to be the law. And so I feel like a lot of people feel like that's what's happening right now in Florida, especially when it comes to these laws that are going against the LGBTQIA community and abortion access. And I think those of us who have dealt with access to abortion for decades, we see the similarities in the arguments that are used when it comes to taking away gender-affirming care. It's the same kind of playbook. They do the same kind of things. They chip away at it slowly, making it difficult. Even right now, as it's still legal to get gender-affirming care in the state of Florida, they make it so difficult that it might be legal, but it's not accessible, and people aren't going to be able to do it. Just like they did with abortion in Texas, where it was still legal in Texas, but they made it to the point where I think there was like 2 clinics. And so while it's legal and on paper they can say, well, we didn't outlaw it, you know, you can still get an abortion, Texas is huge. I mean, how many people are going to be able to travel to a clinic in Texas? So we see a lot of that with the gender-affirming care. We see a lot of the same type of tactics used to ban that from people. And a lot of it is based in not science, because if it was based in science, they wouldn't be doing it. All the major medical associations like the AMA, they support gender-affirming care. They understand what it is for adults and for children. They understand how it helps. They understand that it's life-saving care, because they're not coming from they shouldn't be coming from their personal beliefs. They're coming from science. They're coming from their knowledge of being a doctor and what healthcare is. And unfortunately, this slate of hate, as it's been called, a lot of us feel like those laws have been perpetrated because people have these beliefs that type, being gay, being trans, is wrong against their personal beliefs of how they feel things should be according to a book. And that is where I said that's where the problem comes in, and that's something that we should be pushing back hard against. People shouldn't be legislating their personal beliefs ever, no matter what they are. And so that's what I tried to fight this session. I got up and spoke passionately often. My dear friend who moved to New Hampshire because of the lack of ability to access gender-affirming care, she was my legislative aide. She was the only trans woman working in the Florida Capitol during this last session. The amount of strength that it took for her to get through that session was incredible. But she did it. She told me she would stick by me, and she did it. But you know, she's gone. So people are actively fleeing the state because they're not able to access medicine. And so we want to be really cognizant of the fact that this is what's happening, and it's happening because people are trying to legislate their personal beliefs. So some ways we were fighting back. Obviously with abortion, we have the abortion petition, and I actually have some with me. So if you have not signed it yet, I have some, and I would love for you to fill them out, and I'll get them dropped off to a hub. I think they said 240,000 people have signed it already. That's how many they've gotten. That's incredible. I don't think in all of the years that I have lived in Florida had seen a petition for a ballot initiative. I have never seen them collect it that quickly. So it just goes to show you that people of all political stripes don't agree with this ban. It is effectively a ban because hardly anybody ever realizes that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. And even if you were to recognize that you were pregnant at 5 weeks, that gives you a week to go through 2 doctor's appointments. If you can find doctors that can do it, because now there are doctors that are backing off because they've made all of the rules are so vague, and that's something with every bill. Every bill that came through, we're like, this is so vague, and they're vague on purpose. But it's harmful not only to people who want to have elective abortions, it's harmful to people who are going through a miscarriage. Because the same types of medical procedures and the same type of medicine that a doctor would prescribe to treat somebody who's going through a miscarriage are often used to administer an abortion. And so you have doctors kind of saying, I'm worried about prescribing you this because it could open up an investigation, they could be charged, and we don't need doctors concerned about that. We need doctors to make sure they're taking care of their patients. But unfortunately, it is a worry. We already have a doctor shortage in this state, so this isn't going to help anything as doctors decide, you know what, I can go practice in another state and I won't have to worry about being charged a fine or being charged a felony for simply taking care of my patients, which is what, you know, they want to do. So it is heartening to see that we have collected so many petitions for this. We do have a new law, though, that brings up the threshold for a ballot initiative. Years ago, it was 50%, which makes kind of sense, because you're like, oh, if the majority of the people in the state support something, it should pass. But they were seeing that a lot of people were, you know, putting ballot initiatives on the ballot, and so they moved it up to 60%. And they said in order for this to pass, it has to pass by 60%. Well, a bill went through this session, and it now brings it up to 66.78%, I believe it is. So now we have a higher threshold. It just means we have to work a little bit harder to make sure people understand that this is on the ballot, and that, you know, this is something that they can vote for, and so that we can get it to pass. It's really important that people have access to reproductive care. It's just like gender affirming care is life-saving. And we need to make sure that it's on the ballot. So I also wanted to talk about the immigration bill. I find this one to be really interesting, and I think a lot of you will understand the irony of this bill, especially because we are dealing with a state where there are so many people in the Florida legislature who do identify themselves as Christian, that they would create a bill that would be so heinous to people who are in need. And I think that's one area where I'm really grateful for my grandmother, because if I was to say that she was religious, that would probably be a misnomer. She was just a very spiritual person, and she really cared about immigrants, because the reason being that her Lord and Savior was an immigrant who was looking for a place to land and was able to find a place. And here we have Christians in the Florida legislature who are making it so difficult for people who are trying to escape horrible things that they often speak so loudly against, like communism, dictatorships, and they're coming here to find a way. And I look out into this audience, and I know a good many of us, our families came here the same way, right? My family came from Italy and Ireland over the turn of the century, escaping what it was that they needed to escape to create a life for us. And these people are doing the same thing. I can imagine how hard it is. Like, I think about just moving to another state, and I think about the stress, number one, of just moving, and how hard it is to be in a new place and not know your surroundings. And then you compound that with the fact that you're not a citizen. You might not be able to speak the language. You don't know the customs. You're trying to learn your way around, and then now people are making it so difficult for you to even make a living. And so it's a really hateful, in my opinion, it's a really hateful and cruel bill, and it attacks a lot of the places of worship that do help immigrants. There are some. I can think of Sister Ann with the farm workers. She does a lot of work to help the immigrants, and it's attacking her. It's attacking these religious organizations that want to be helpful, that want to do what they feel is the Christian thing to do, which is to help people in need, and it's making these people scared to help them. It's making it hard to help them. And I just find the hypocrisy is kind of overwhelming to me. And it's also one of those bills that ironically, you find a weird ally in, because the business community also doesn't like that bill. They don't like it because it is making life very difficult for them as well. We have hospitality workers who are not showing up for their jobs because they're scared. We have construction workers who are not showing up for their jobs because they're scared. We have agricultural workers. So the business community was also against this bill. So it's very rare that you find a bill as a Democrat and a single minority in the Florida House of Legislatures where you're agreeing with the religious community. You know, you're seeing them come up and speak and you're like, wow, I agree with everything they're saying right now. And you see the business community coming up and speaking out against it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I agree with everything they say right now. So in this bill, we found unusual allies. They were advocating against it for two different reasons, but I appreciated their voices because it was needed. And I think because of that, we got the bill, which is still very bad. Let's be very clear, it's a very bad bill, but it was a lot worse. I mean, it was so bad that I think back to when my daughter was little. We lived in an apartment complex, and she had a lot of friends, and I was always like the mom that all the friends would come over, and they'd be like, where are you going? And I'd say, well, we're going to go to McDonald's for family night, and they'd say, can we come? And I'd be like, sure. Everyone just load up in the car, you know, tell the parents we're going to McDonald's, fine, have a great time. And I didn't realize until later that one of my daughter's friends was a DACA recipient, because when you're dealing with 7 and 8 year old kids, you're not like, excuse me, where are you from? Do you have papers? Like, that's not the things that you ask little children, right? You're like, get in the car, let's go out, let's go have a good time. And it wasn't until Obama had passed DACA that she wrote a Facebook post that I realized that all this time that I've known her, she had a status where she was not documented. And if this law had gone into effect, if I got pulled over, I could have gotten arrested and charged with a felony for driving a little kid to McDonald's. It's horrible. Of course, that wouldn't have been the target for this law. The target would have been for employers, and the target was for people who were helping. But still, I could have been an unintended target of this. Thankfully, you can drive people around as long as you're not driving them into the state, which is still, like I said, problematic. But you can drive people around. Hospitals are required to ask someone's immigration status. They are not required to answer. And for myself, if I go to a hospital and I'm asked that question, I'm going to tell them that I refuse to answer, because I believe that that's something we should all do. They're not there to find out what my immigration status is. They're there to make sure that I'm well. And that's something that I want people to know, that if they go to the hospital and they're asked, they do not have to answer. People have certain rights still, even in this state, which is uniquely, we are within a border everywhere, pretty much everywhere we are in this state. That people know their rights and what they can and cannot say. And so I want to make sure that people know if they go to the hospital, the hospitals have to ask, but the people don't have to answer. So I think that's really important to know as well. But yeah, it was a really horrible bill, even as it stands, even though it's gotten better, it's still really bad. And it's a shame that I serve on the Climate and Energy Caucus, and we're dealing with some really horrible stuff out there, right? And our state is just, we're sticking out there like a sandbar in the middle of the ocean. And I mean, let's be honest, and we really need to be focusing on things like climate. And it would be really, really wonderful if instead of fighting about people getting gender affirming care or access to abortion, we were brainstorming some really great ways to take care of the real problems we have right now, which is our climate. And also if we understood that a lot of the people that we are seeing coming into our country right now, they're not only running away from horrible governors and governments, they're running away from climate. In some places, they're dealing with droughts and they're not able to grow things. And we're going to be dealing with a lot more climate migrants if we don't do something about the climate now. And it's frustrating, as I'm sure to you, it's frustrating to me as a legislator, but just as a person who has a child, who wants to see her have a future, wants to see her be able to grow old, that we cannot focus on these things because we are so focused on these things that at the end of the day really don't matter, right? If somebody gets gender affirming care or not, that's not my business. That's their business. That's between them and their doctor, and it should stay that way. So, our hopes are that, we can get some other people elected who, whether they have a strong belief in God or whether they have a strong belief in Allah, whatever they believe, they have a stronger belief in that we need to not legislate from a religious book. We need to legislate based on our laws, and that they will also fight for what's right so that we can stop focusing on these things that really don't matter and start really, really honing in on the things that do, so that all of us can live long lives and be safe and thrive in this beautiful state that we all call home. So, are there any other questions? I open it up.
We need to use the microphone so that the people that are watching you in a couple weeks on video will have heard your question.
Yes, and Marcia's a constituent, so I'm so excited.
I'm my assembly person. Can you, I think I had asked you this once before when I saw you recently, is there anything good that happened in the legislature this year?
Yes, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I know. So there have been, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm doom scrolling through the whole thing that we just went through. So there have been some good things. So a few good things that have happened. I think because of the abortion ban, there has been a focus on trying to not seem like they don't care about kids. It is all really performative, but unfortunately we get some good things out of it, like the expansion of kids care. I don't think that would have passed if they weren't trying to show or like signal that, hey, we understand all these children are going to be born, and like, you know, we can't just, you know, we got to do something about it. So that was passed. So that's a good thing. Also something it's I think it's pretty impressive. We were able to get lactation spaces in courthouses for people that want. Again, it goes along with the agenda of people are going to be having more babies, and we're going to want to make sure that they have spaces for them to feed these babies if they don't feel comfortable doing it. So that was passed. So there were, I think, a lot more things that helped with the, like I said, with the kids care and things like that. They're also doing a study to try to see, it's in Miami, and see if this will help possibly relieve the Medi waiver issue, because there's a lot of people with disabilities that are out there who are going to age out of the system but are not going to be able to get what they need to take care of themselves. It's going to put them in a huge donut hole. I filed the expansion of Medicaid buy-in for people with disabilities that would have, you know, wiped out that Medi waiver, and I think that we're like 1 of 4 states that don't do that. Rep. Joseph, she filed the whole Medicaid expansion. I think we're like 1 of 7 now that doesn't take that federal money. Both were denied, but at least they're doing something in Miami to see if they can find a way that they like that will help kind of relieve some of the issues with the Medi waivers.
Thanks for highlighting those. We know there's more than that, but those are the ones that stuck out. So
Yeah.
maybe there weren't more than that. I don't know.
There were some more, but I think those are the 2 really good ones. I think the expansion of kids care was really kind of important that got passed.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. We really appreciate it. I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, because our Republican friends in the legislature are so focused on anti-woke, ridiculous culture wars, they're ignoring an absolute crisis that's happening in this state, which is homeowners insurance.
Yes.
People are being dropped, premiums are skyrocketing, more and more people are going on Citizens. And it's to the point where it's squeezing out the middle class from Florida. So we'll be left eventually, if they don't fix something, with either the very wealthy who can self-insure, or the very poor who just go without insurance. My first question was, is anything going on at all in the legislature to help with this horrific crisis that's preventing people from even being able to buy homes? And then I have a second follow-up question.
So to answer your first question, so yeah, they did something, right? They passed something during a special session, and actually after that was passed, my homeowner's insurance went up 50%. So I found out because my husband was like yelling in the kitchen, and I was like, what's going on? And he's like, the homeowners. So yeah, it is terrible. And unfortunately, the last special session that they had for this didn't do anything. And now we're seeing that Citizens, I just read something that they're going to increase their rates by like 10 to 12%, which is, you know, I hear that they want to do something else. My worry is, what is it? Because you've had how many chances now at it? And a huge problem with being in a super minority is that they don't listen to us. It is beyond partisanship. Like they don't have to consider us, because all the Democrats in the House could call in sick and they could pass bills all day long while we're out. So there's no coming to the table and saying, well, what are your ideas? So they just throw their ideas, which are usually ideas given to them by the insurance lobby, and then they make it a bill. And then when it's really terrible, like as Democrats, we stand up and we warn them about. We have Hillary Cosell, who's amazing, and she's an insurance lawyer. She actually represented consumers against big insurance companies. And she gets up there and says, this is bad, and this is why, and this is what's going to happen. And they push the bill through anyway. And she's like, I hate to say I told you so, but this is everything that she said was going to happen is what's happening right now. And so my desire is that, yes, we actually truly address it in a way where our constituents get a voice at the table as well. That we sit down at the table and we say, these are our ideas to deal with property insurance issue. But they will not do that unless we have narrowed that gap. They just will not take us into consideration, and therefore their ideas are gonna keep coming from a lobby who is gonna get more money from whatever idea they throw up there and say, okay, this is our solution. Our solution, take away two-way attorney fees. That was a solution to help lower property insurance. It worked, right? When citizens like, yeah, we'll just hike it up 10% more. That didn't really seem to work. So it's frustrating. It's incredible. As someone who owns a home in the state, I feel you. And you cannot have insurance, homeowners insurance in the state, because anywhere, I mean, we saw with the last hurricane. That hurricane hit far away from us, but our Central Florida got flooded. You know, and so. And the more that we develop, I mean, it starts to see, you know, other places are getting flooded that don't normally flood because now the wetlands are gone, so the water doesn't have the same places to go. So you have to have insurance in this state. Even if it's not flood insurance, you have to at least have homeowners insurance. So it's a frustrating situation, and I wish there was an easy answer, but we're just going to have to go back and, when they bring it to us again, we're going to have to go back and fight like we did the last time to at least try to get them to amend it so it's not as much of a giveaway to insurance companies.
Thank you for that. You touched on what my second question is, which is, do Democrats have any hope of making a more balanced legislature by winning elections, or does it look hopelessly red for as far as the eye can see? Can you share with us a little bit about what hope we have to make a more balanced legislature, please?
We actually have a lot of hope. We actually have a lot of hope. And I think that's something that we need to sit with for a moment. They are drunk with power, and even Republicans see that. I've had Republican business owners call me and say, in Lake Nona, and say, I'm so upset, like all of these jobs that we lost, like I was counting on them. I was counting on these people coming into this. Yeah, I was counting on those people with money. Those business owners were counting on those people with those $100,000 a year jobs coming and spending money in their stores and their shops, and now what do I do? And I'm like, well, first they asked me, what can you do? And I'm like, I would love to do more. But I'm honest with them, and I tell them, look, you know what? You might be a Republican, and that's fine. But here's something really wild that you can do. You can split your ticket. You do not have to vote for one party up and down the thing. Where you vote up there, I'm not gonna push you. But if you want to see the ability to work together, it needs to be more even. At the very least, they need to be forced to come to the table and talk to us. And a lot of people have been kind of disgusted with the fact that they haven't. And also that abortion ban, that was really stupid. That was that was the stupidest thing I think I could have imagined they would do. Because what they unleashed, and I said it on the floor and I will say it again, I didn't go on that floor and give a speech about boo-hoo, we're so upset, this is traumatizing us, because I'm tired of giving them that. They like that. They like it when we cry. What I gave them was like, you don't know what the F you just did. You woke up so many people who are just, they were willing, a lot of people were, the 15 abortion ban was to me extreme, but a lot of people were willing to accept that as a fair compromise. Even people who are like, they're pro-life, but really they're like, well, whatever, each to themselves, whatever. They were willing to accept that as a compromise, but that 6-week ban, that was too much for them. That was way too much for them. And I think it's going to ignite a lot of people, and it's either going to drive down their voters, like, suppress them to the point where they're like, I don't want to come out and vote for these people because they're acting a fool up there. Or it's going to drive us up, and that's what happened the last time. And I'm assuming you all are either NPAs who lean to the liberal side, or you're Democrats. I'm going to make that assumption. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Sorry for profiling you. Please forgive me. But I'm
Republican, thank you very much.
right. But I'm assuming that everybody in this room feels the same way I do about abortion rights, right? You think that they should be there. So it's. Our last election, our voter turnout was really bad. It was bad because I hate that we have to have so much reverence for our elected, candidates or candidates that are running, but we really do kind of have to have that, like, oh, we love them and we're so like moved to vote because of them. But we're like that. We're kind of like, we're the hopey, changey people who are like, oh, we want to be so inspired, and I get it. I'm the same way. I love that stuff too. So our turnout wasn't high because I don't feel like we felt inspired by our candidates. But also we just went through a hurricane a few weeks before. And there were areas in like where I live that were completely underwater, and they were Democratic areas, by the way. And so the turnout was like 11% because the people were not there. And or the last thing they were thinking about is making sure to go vote, which is why voting by mail is so important, because it really does increase the voter turnout, especially, and it turns in our favor most times. So I think we're going to see a lot more people inspired to vote because of that ballot initiative on the ballot. And that's one thing that, we might sometimes, kind of get ourselves by not being inspired by our candidates, but we get really inspired by our movements. And so we're going to see, the abortion, ballot initiative is going to be on the ballot. It's going to make it. We're at 240,000 right now. We're like on fire with that.
How many do they need?
I think like 900,000.
By when?
December.
Okay.
But we're doing really good. Also, the recreational marijuana.
Yep.
is out there too. Yeah. And that's gonna bring out people too that are gonna tend to vote our way. And of course, clean water, which I think would be a no-brainer. Let's clean water, like, who needs that, right? That should be on the ballot initiative for that one. It's already out there. It's already a thing. I don't know, but yeah. So I think that I really do think, but I think the important thing is that as leaders in your communities, that you let people know that there's hope. All these like little seats around Orange County, I'm gonna use Orange County as the best example because it's what I know the best. All these little seats, they like won them by a smidge, and they won them because the turnout for Democrats and MPs that lean Democratic was very low.
11% is all that voted?
11% in some precincts in VDL, yes.
Because I read that 200,000 registered Democrats did not vote in the last
That
election.
wasn't across the board. That was in some precincts in BBL, which is in Kissimmee, but they were the Democratic precincts. Some of those precincts had 11% Democratic turnout, but they were literally underwater. I mean, these people's homes were underwater. They weren't there. They were either in a hotel or they were staying with family. We had a lot of lack of turnout around the UCF area. I know that hurt Representative Smith, in his reelection because there was a lot of lack of turnout, and I think for that they were just really uninspired by the top of the ticket. So really kind of leaning in on people and letting them know when you talk to them that there are more people on that ticket, and the lower you go down that ballot, the more access you have to them. Like, you really, and the more impact they have on you personally, right? And so, I would tell people, of course I want to encourage people to vote for president as well, but I would tell people, like, if you don't know who you want to vote for, or you're uninspired, or you don't like either one of them, that's fine. I'm not going to spend the next 2 hours arguing with you why you should vote for somebody. It's important, but but at least vote for the people that you could actually pick up a phone and talk to. You can actually show up and you can talk to me in person. You can't maybe march up to Washington and say, I want to speak to, President ... But you can call up my staff and be like, I want to talk to Representative Harris, I want a meeting with her, and you'll get a meeting with me. I mean, you have access, so vote for the people that who actually will touch your lives and can have access to you. So, but yeah, please encourage people that all hope is not lost. They only won some of these seats by very little. We have a lot of room for improvement. I saw 2 questions. I know that
Yep,
the
we got-
lady in the pink has.
Yeah, so let me stack up a few. I've got Jeff and Norma and Doug. Did you want to be in there? And you as well, okay. I lean to the left.
A lot of things disappointed me this session, the whole woke business and the permitless carry gun thing. But the most surprising thing to me was the redistricting thing. And I wonder, as someone who was in the room, when the Republicans decided to just acquiesce to DeSantis and let him draw the map, which sort of eliminated one black representative for, I think, in my opinion. What was it like to be in the room, and why did they do that? And now that the Supreme Court has struck down Alabama's redistricting, do you think there's a chance that there's going to be a swinging back in the other direction? I mean, how did you see that happen in Tallahassee?
Well, first of all, it happened the session previous, so I wasn't there at the time, but I was watching. I was watching as intently as you probably were, and like you, I was horrified. I think in the whole state we had 4 congressional districts that were considered black access, and we lost 2. One of them right here, nearby, and that created quite an issue. I'm heartened to see what happened in Alabama, and I'm hoping that happens, that there's a good chance that that could be struck, that our map could be struck down and considered unconstitutional. And that's what I'm hoping for. And why do they do it? Because they understand who is a voting bloc that usually votes against them. I mean, if you want to be really honest, like, they see how certain groups vote. And so if they can minimize their power and their access to power, it's, at the end of the day, it's going to help them. Which is why they make all these laws limiting access to the ability to vote. And they really do seem to target communities that overwhelmingly support Democrats or Democratic values at the very least. And so my personal opinion was that was the reason. It took away 2 congressional seats from, the Black community. Right. And that's why they did it, because they wanted to. Yeah.
What can we as individuals do to help that ballot initiative?
You can go on the website, you can download your own ballot initiative petition and sign it and send it back in. You can print up a bunch and take them down around to your neighbors. I carry them with me all the time now. And whenever I talk to people, I wear a lot of political shirts when I'm out and about. And I do it because I'm making a statement, but I also do it because it's a good way to find like-minded people. And so when they say, "Oh, I love your shirt," I say, "Oh, thank you. Do you know that abortion can be on the ballot?" And I'll get them to sign something real quick. And they have hubs where you can drop them off. And if you're willing to drive, the most notable one I know is the Florida Rising office, which is on Colonial. So you can collect them, have them give them, so that you know for sure you're handing it back. You're handing them in, and that people are going to actually get them. And there'll be nothing will happen to you for having them fill that out. We have to keep fighting. I mean, we have to keep fighting, and I think that's what the message is for all of us. And it's hard because we feel tired, and there's so many things that we're fighting at the same time that it feels really overwhelming and difficult. But when I look at this room and look at all the amazing people that are here, and so that's one bright spot, is that you really get to form a really good community of people that can kind of go through it with you, and we'll all get strength from each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.